Will artificial intelligence help us become more human, or will it slowly cause us to forget what it means to be human? That may sound like a question for science fiction, but it's quickly becoming one of the most important moral questions of our time. Artificial intelligence is transforming medicine, healthcare, education, communications, scientific research, and nearly every aspect of our daily lives. It has the potential to help physicians diagnose diseases earlier, accelerate life saving treatments, and improve care for millions of people. But it also has the potential to influence who receives medical care, reshape reproductive technologies, rank human embryos, select against disabilities, and redefine how society values human life. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into our world, one question rises above all others: who decides what human life is worth? In May, Pope Leo XIV offered the Church's answer in his landmark encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, the magnificence of humanity. Rather than beginning with technology, he begins with the human person. Before asking what artificial intelligence can do, he challenges us to answer a more fundamental question: what does it mean to be human? In this episode, I'll walk through the major themes of Magnifica Humanitas, explain why Christian personalism provides the essential foundation for evaluating AI, and explore the profound bioethical implications of artificial intelligence in medicine and healthcare. We'll discuss both the tremendous promise of AI and the serious ethical risks it presents, especially for preborn babies, persons with disabilities, elderly people, and all others who are most vulnerable. If we're going to shape the future of artificial intelligence, we first need to recover an authentic understanding of the human person. Because in the end, the future of AI won't be determined by algorithms or engineers. It will be determined by the moral vision of the people who create, govern, and use them. Our anthropology will ultimately determine our technology. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the Bioethics Babe podcast, where we examine the tough questions in human flourishing in light of science, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Arina Grossu Agnew. Now let's dive in. Hi everybody, this is Arina Grossu Agnew, and we're trying something new today. So last week I gave a talk on AI, and in light of Pope Leo XIV's encyclical on AI, I thought it would be great to start this conversation together. This will be one of many episodes on AI because I do think it is shaping and transforming our civilization. And so I wanted to just dive in, especially from the perspective of how AI affects and influences bioethics. And so we'll dive right in. So basically, artificial intelligence is no longer a futuristic concept. As we know, a lot of us actually use AI on a daily basis or work in AI. So obviously, this is not something that is something in the future. We're living it. And it's transforming every aspect and every industry as we know it. It's transforming medicine, education, communications, finance, scientific research, military strategy, and virtually every aspect of our lives. And so in healthcare alone, AI is being used in many positive ways. I wanted to preface and talk about those before we also dive into the risks of AI. And so some of the ways that AI is being used well is to interpret radiology scans, analyze pathology slides, predict disease progression, identify rare diseases, accelerate drug development, personalize treatments, and streamline administrative tasks. And so obviously, these advancements have the potential to reduce human suffering, right? And improve patient outcomes, improve people's lives, and expand access to medical care. But every single technological revolution also raises a moral question. And so throughout history, major technological breakthroughs have brought both the extraordinary opportunities as well as the profound ethical challenges. And so, for example, with the Industrial Revolution, it transformed labor. Nuclear technology transformed warfare, and biotechnology transformed medicine. And artificial intelligence has the potential to transform every human institution simultaneously. So the question before us is not whether AI is powerful, it clearly is. The deeper question is whether our moral formation is keeping pace with our technological advancements. And I would agree, and I would argue that it isn't. And so this is the central question that Pope Leo XIV took up when he wrote Magnifica Humanitas in May. And Pope Leo XIV argues that AI ultimately forces us to answer a much older philosophical question and a theological question, which is, what does it mean to be human? And before discussing algorithms, we must first understand the human person. If our anthropology is wrong, our ethics will be wrong. Anthropology is our understanding of what it means to be human. It answers the most fundamental questions about the human person. Who are we? What gives us inherent dignity and worth? What is the purpose of life? How should we treat one another? And from a Christian perspective, anthropology teaches that every human person is created in the image and likeness of God and possesses inherent dignity from conception to natural death, and is a body and soul unity, and is called to know, love, and serve God and others. And as I mentioned, our anthropology shapes our technology. If our ethics are wrong, our technology will eventually be used in ways that diminish rather than protect human dignity. So first, let's give an overview of Magnifica Humanitas, which really is translated as magnificent humanities, or the great magnificent humanity, the greatness of humanity. And Pope Leo intentionally echoes Pope Leo XIII, who wrote Rerum Novarum about the Industrial Revolution and about labor. And as I mentioned, just as industrialization transformed labor and economics, AI is transforming nearly every aspect of our society. So we stand at a crossroads. Will technology deepen human flourishing, or will it reduce human beings to data, productivity, and efficiency? The Pope's central thesis is that AI is not fundamentally a technological issue, it's an anthropological, moral, and spiritual issue. And again, technology must always remain the servant of humanity, not its master. And this is a theme that we're going to repeat throughout this episode. So I will walk you a little bit through the different chapters in the Encyclical so that you know what Pope Leo is doing. And then we are going to apply it to bioethics and to our daily life. So in the first chapter, Pope Leo makes the point that the church has always engaged emerging technologies. And Catholic social teaching develops by applying timeless truths to new circumstances. And as I mentioned, AI affects every aspect of our society, including medicine, economics, politics, education, warfare, family life, and culture. And therefore, ethical discernment cannot be left solely to engineers or technology companies. This involves all of us. The church has the responsibility and the competence to contribute to this conversation because AI ultimately concerns the human person. And this is also the reason why each and every one of us should be involved in these discussions about AI, because we should not relegate it just to the engineers and these technology companies, but we have the capacity to shape AI. And I would say even the moral responsibility to shape AI. but first to shape ourselves, and then be able to shape AI through a formed conscience. In the second chapter of the Encyclical, Pope Leo talks about the foundation of Catholic ethics, which is, again, based on Christian personalism, that every single human being is created in the image and likeness of God, and that human dignity is intrinsic. It's not something that is earned. So our worth does not depend on intelligence, independence, productivity, health, or social usefulness. And this is something that goes against the grain of modern culture, because, and especially against what AI is set up to do, right? AI is very good at being efficient and productive, and obviously has all the information that it can just put together in seconds. So we have to really distinguish what makes human beings unique, and why AI, even though it's a very useful machine, again, it can also be a very dangerous machine. But nevertheless, it is a machine. And so this is a huge point that we need to continue bringing up whenever people talk about AI, because there's a tendency to look at AI and potentially even see, can humans be transformed, more like the transhumanist movement. And we've done an episode on that if you're interested in listening and in tuning into that topic specifically. But again, AI is a tool, it's a machine, and it can be used for great good, or it can be used for great evil. So Catholic social teaching provides the framework that we need to look at AI and also any other new emerging technology. And so here are some of the important themes from Catholic social teaching that should guide our thinking about AI. The first and foremost, human dignity. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, does this AI system recognize and protect the inherent dignity of every human person? And because every human person possesses that inherent dignity and is made in the image and likeness of God, and that person's worth is not based on any characteristic except the fact that that person belongs to the human family, AI must never reduce people to data points, economic units, risk scores, or biological material. And again, we did another episode on materialism versus Christian personalism with Dr. Ashley Fernandez. And I encourage you to tune into that episode if you're interested in learning more about the difference between those two philosophies. The application of the principle of human dignity is that AI should never rank the value of human lives or make decisions that treat some people as less worthy of care, protection, or respect. Another principle of Catholic social teaching is the common good. And the question here that we should keep at the forefront is, does this technology promote the flourishing of the whole human family, especially the most vulnerable people? In these times, we recall with even more urgency St. John Paul II's words, quote, "A society will be judged on the basis of how it treats its weakest members, and among the most vulnerable are surely the unborn and the dying," end of quote. AI should serve society as a whole, not merely maximize profits, efficiency, or power for a privileged few. And technological innovation should strengthen health, education, peace, and authentic human flourishing. And the application of this is that AI should be developed and implemented in ways that benefits patients, families, communities, and future generations, rather than serving only commercial or institutional interests. The third principle of Catholic social teaching to keep in mind is solidarity. The question here is, does this technology strengthen our responsibility for one another, especially the poor and the vulnerable? We are one human family, and AI should deepen compassion, accompaniment, and care, rather than create a bigger divide where people are isolated or excluded. Progress should be measured by how well it serves those most likely to be overlooked or discarded. And the application of this is that AI should enhance human relationships and ensure that preborn babies, elderly people, disabled people, chronically ill people, and marginalized people are protected rather than disadvantaged. A fourth principle of Catholic social teaching is subsidiarity. And the question here is, does this technology support human decision making without replacing it? And this is a very important point in how we use AI, because AI should never replace our own critical thinking or human relationships. AI should assist persons, families, physicians, and local communities, but not concentrate authority in algorithms or centralized systems. And human moral responsibility must always remain at the center of important decisions. We cannot ever relegate important moral decisions to AI. The application of this is that AI should inform clinical judgment, but physicians and patients, not algorithms, must remain responsible for life and death decisions in healthcare. A fifth principle of Catholic social teaching is justice. And the question here is, does this AI system treat every person fairly and guard against discrimination? AI must be transparent, accountable, and designed to prevent bias and unequal treatment. Justice requires protecting those who are most vulnerable to discrimination or exclusion. And the application of this is that AI should never deny care, opportunities, or resources based on disability, age, race, intelligence, socioeconomic status, or the predicted so-called quality of life. A sixth principle of Catholic social teaching is the universal destination of goods. And the question here is, who benefits from this technology and who is being left behind? The benefits of AI should be shared broadly rather than concentrated among a small number of corporations, governments, or wealthy populations. And technological progress should reduce inequities, not deepen them. And the application of this is that AI should expand access to healthcare, to ethical healthcare, medical innovation, and life-saving technologies, particularly for those who are underserved and vulnerable. In the third chapter of the Encyclical, Pope Leo talks about how technology must never replace our humanity. And again, the title of the Encyclical is Magnifica Humanitas, the grandeur of humanity. And so he speaks about the grandeur of humanity in light of AI. And so Pope Leo critiques this technocratic paradigm, right? Modern society increasingly assumes every human problem has a technological solution. But that's not true. We know that. Again, I've done episodes on, for example, infertility. And even with all of the technologies out there, there are people out there who still cannot conceive, right? First of all, we don't have a solution to every single human problem. But I think that that's by design, right? I think that God keeps us humble that way. Efficiency is often treated as the highest good. AI risks encouraging us to see human beings as systems to optimize rather than persons to love. And I think that the way that this makes sense to me is, human beings are not like computers or iPhones that need to be upgraded. Again, this goes against the transhumanist movement and principles, but we are good, and we are good as we are, as God made us, right? And so this is the risk that AI kind of pushes us towards. And while AI can process information at astonishing speeds, right, even seemingly unlimited amounts of information, Human intelligence is fundamentally different and superior to AI in these ways. Human intelligence includes conscience, prudence, moral responsibility, creativity, empathy, wisdom, relationships, and openness to God. AI does not possess any of those qualities. These uniquely human capabilities must never be delegated to a machine and cannot be replicated by a machine. In the fourth chapter of the Encyclical, Pope Leo talks about truth, work, and freedom. With truth, it's important to understand that with AI, it is possible that there could be falsehoods, right? And misinformation that can spread very quickly. And we need to ask ourselves, what systems need to be in place to ensure that AI is not operating from a discriminatory bias, especially in healthcare decisions? And Christians are called to become witnesses to truth in this age of algorithmic manipulation. In terms of work is more than economic production. And we know that AI, it threatens many jobs. It could replace many jobs. And as I mentioned, there are things that AI can never replace about what the human person and human intelligence can do, right? But work in particular is a participation in God's activity, and it can sanctify us. So we cannot be separated from work as humans. And even with the help of AI, we must never relegate all work to AI. So this is a quote from the Encyclical. Quote, "It is a requirement of the human condition, a normal path toward maturity, development, and personal fulfillment." I'll repeat that. Work is a requirement of the human condition, a normal path toward maturity, development, and personal fulfillment. AI can assist us with tasks, but should never replace human thinking, which is critical thinking, and human ingenuity and human relationships for the sake of production or efficiency. AI should serve the human person, not become its master. A third theme in this chapter is freedom. Algorithms increasingly shape what we read, buy, believe, and even desire. And we know this even from social media, the types of ads that come up, right? Those algorithms know what we're looking at, what we're following. But authentic freedom requires truth, virtue, and moral formation, not simply unlimited choices. In the fifth chapter of the Encyclical, Pope Leo talks about the civilization of love. He envisions technology that is ordered toward solidarity rather than domination. AI should strengthen peace, justice, fraternity, and authentic human relationships. One example where AI can be absolutely disastrous in terms of the human family is with autonomous weapons. And Pope Leo brings this up. And he talks about these artificial moral agents, quote unquote. And this is a quote from the Encyclical. "Yet moral judgment cannot be reduced to calculation, for it involves conscience, personal responsibility, and the recognition of the other as a person. Therefore, it is not permissible to entrust lethal or otherwise irreversible decisions to artificial systems. No algorithm can make war morally acceptable." Now, thankfully, in the Catholic Church, we have the just war doctrine. But autonomous weapons that are set off by AI tools do not have a place there. As Pope Leo said, it is not permissible to entrust lethal or otherwise irreversible decisions to artificial systems because it takes humans out of that equation, which is the temptation. Well, people who don't want to be responsible for the deaths of others. So that's the temptation. But ethics requires moral human agency. It requires that humans are the ones who make ethical decisions, not that it's relegated to artificial systems. So let's talk about why Christian personalism matters for AI. Again, Christian personalism states that every human being is created by God, made in his image, is unique, unrepeatable, inherently valuable, and that we have a soul. And human dignity does not depend on intelligence, physical ability, age, race, consciousness, independence, productivity, or even wantedness. Persons are never objects. The human person is never a product, a commodity, biological material, a consumer, a data point, or a means to another person's goals. Instead, every person is always an end in and of himself or herself and worthy of love. Again, instead, every person is always an end in and of himself or herself and worthy of love. So why does this matter for AI? Since AI increasingly evaluates people using measurable variables, such as risk, cost, efficiency, productivity, probability, and predicted outcomes, Christian personalism insists that these metrics never determine human worth. So now let's talk about some of the bioethical applications of AI. Again, there are extraordinary opportunities with AI, right? AI can improve medicine by recognizing diseases earlier, identifying rare disorders, accelerating ethical research, improving maternal and fetal care, and even reducing physician burnout. Having AI handle the administrative tasks affords physicians more time to spend with their patients, which we know that our healthcare system is sorely lacking. It can even expand access to specialists. And AI can synthesize enormous amounts of information, of clinical information, and help to even see trends. I actually used AI to put in my lab work, and over the last few years, and it came up with the trends, which was incredible. I was able to bring that summary to my doctor to discuss it. So again, AI can be a very powerful and positive tool. These developments should be welcomed when they genuinely serve patients. However, as we've already discussed, there are also serious ethical concerns about AI. The biggest one in healthcare is eugenics. AI can facilitate embryo grading, right? Where embryos are evaluated based on their physical characteristics. This is already happening with IVF, but it'll be even more so the case as more AI technologies are implemented. There's also embryo ranking, where those embryos are ordered based on their predicted implantation success, live birth potential, or genetic profile. There's also increasingly the AI-powered polygenic risk scoring that's being used, which estimates an embryo's likelihood of developing certain diseases or traits, even though it is often incorrect. And also, it's misleading because it just predicts likelihood, not necessarily what is actually going to happen with that embryo. And this facilitates disability selection and the pursuit of designer babies. If you're interested in learning more about designer babies and all the ethical problems with what's going on in reproductive technologies, I encourage you to tune into my conversation with Dr. Tara Sander-Lee on this topic. So this encourages, designer babies encourages the selection of embryos based on predicted genetic characteristics rather than recognizing their equal dignity, right? And the danger becomes it's that healthcare shifts from becoming healing to selecting desirable, quote unquote, human beings. Another issue with AI is that it runs the risk of doing, quote unquote, quality of life medicine. Algorithms may recommend when to withhold treatments, when to limit resources for somebody, or even to deny expensive therapies based on the predicted, quote unquote, quality of life. Again, I could see insurance companies using this to generate whether or not they will cover certain procedures or how much it's going to cost them, and then deny that person based on AI calculations of cost and also the biases that AI brings in terms of quality of life, quote unquote, arguments. And the Catholic ethicist and Catholic ethics asks, who decides whose life is worth living? Again, AI is built in based on the information that's out there that it collects. And so it has all that bias built in. And these types of arguments based on quote unquote quality of life, etc., or even this eugenic mentality, this transhumanist mentality is very concerning. And the bias that I'm referring to is that AI learns from historical data. And again, AI just aggregates all information that's out there, including the bias that's out there. And if the data reflects discrimination, AI can perpetuate discrimination against vulnerable people. So technology can unintentionally reinforce injustice. There's also the danger of a loss of the physician-patient relationship. Medicine is not merely technical, it's relational. Patients need compassion, accompaniment, prudence, and moral judgment. And when you're talking with ChatGPT or whatever AI tool you use, it can sound compassionate. It doesn't actually have compassion, nor does it have moral judgment, nor does it have prudence, nor can it actually accompany you. Sadly, I'll share a story about this that I read about this teenage boy who committed suicide with the help of AI. And instead of AI helping to direct him to the suicide hotline, helping to direct him to speak with his support system, his family, his friends, AI ultimately encouraged him to commit suicide and even to keep that suicidal ideation away from his support system, which is an abuse of technology. And now the family's suing, understandably so, because they lost their son because of the type of information that AI was giving their son. And so we have a responsibility to help shape AI so that it becomes and that it is only a tool that helps human beings and doesn't harm them. But those things that I mentioned, moral judgment, compassion, accompaniment, prudence, none of these can be automated or relegated to AI. In terms of the preferential option for the vulnerable, AI particularly affects vulnerable populations such as frozen embryos, preborn children, children diagnosed prenatally with disabilities, persons with profound disabilities, elderly patients, dementia patients, terminally ill individuals, economically disadvantaged communities, and patients with mental health issues. So again, when we look at AI, we have to look at whether or not that tool will help the people who are most vulnerable, the ones that I just mentioned. So we need to ask ourselves, whose interests are being protected and what underlying bias is guiding those interests? Who bears the risks and who is being left behind? And now in this section, I want to discuss what should Catholics do and anyone who believes that Christian personalism is the way to live life is the way to ethically provide and help people and communities and culture. All of this sounds daunting, and you might think to yourself, well, what can little old me do? What can the average person do to help shape the future of AI? First thing you can do is live out Christian personalism. Again, if we recover a Christian understanding of the human person and that the human person has inherent dignity and worth and is created in the image and likeness of God, then we're going to treat people differently, right? All of this craziness that's happening, whether it's in politics and culture, where people are just really nasty to one another, this is not living out the call of Christian personalism, which is to see the dignity of the person in front of you. Another thing you could do is to educate yourself and others. Learn how AI works, where it is being used, and both its promise and limitations. Then share that knowledge with your family, friends, your peers, your colleagues, and your community. For example, you ought to know whether or not your doctor is using AI to diagnose you. Is your insurance company using AI to decide whether or not you're going to get treatment or not? So it's important to know where it's being used in ways that affect our health. And not just our health, but obviously this is the focus of this episode, and the Bioethics Babe podcast is focused on the healthcare aspect. Another thing you can do is form your conscience. Evaluate AI and emerging technologies through the principles of Catholic bioethics and Catholic social teaching, as we went through the Encyclical together. Rather than assuming that every technological advance represents moral progress or that it is automatically bad. Another thing you do is use AI thoughtfully and responsibly. You can allow AI to assist your work and decision making, but never ever surrender your moral judgment, your critical thinking, your creativity, or your human relationships to a machine. Provide feedback when AI responses are inaccurate, harmful, or misleading, because that also teaches it. The next thing you could do is ask ethical questions. Before adopting or supporting an AI system, ask, does it respect human dignity? Does it promote the common good? Who benefits? Who could be harmed? The next thing you could do is protect authentic human relationships. And I would say this goes for both AI and social media. And we know that social media can kill authentic human relationships. You think you're surrounded by people, but you're not. You're just seeing a vision of what's being put out there on social media. And so it's important that even with all of these technologies around us, that we protect what's the most important, which is our human relationships. Prioritize conversation over automation, accompaniment over isolation, and genuine human presence over digital convenience. I did my interview with Amanda Ackman, and she started the organization called Dying to Meet You in Canada. And what I love about what she's done, Amanda is doing just that, developing human relationships. And her, assessment of the situation is that most people who choose euthanasia in Canada are doing it mainly because they're lonely or they feel that they're a burden on their family or on society. And she goes around the country and speaks and does interviews internationally to say, no, you matter. Just because you're older, just because you have a certain disability, does not mean that you don't have value. And she promotes these human relationships that we should all be promoting in our friend groups and with our families, with our peers and colleagues. And so I encourage you to listen to that episode. And we must teach children and young adults to view AI as a tool that serves humanity, not as a substitute for wisdom, virtue, or relationships. The next thing we could do is shape the marketplace. We do this already when we boycott certain companies or support certain companies because of where they stand. So support organizations and companies that use AI to heal, educate, strengthen families, and protect every human life, and especially those who are most vulnerable. Consumer choices influence what technologies are developed and rewarded. And so what you choose to support matters. Another thing you can do is engage in public life. Advocate for ethical AI by supporting laws and policies that promote transparency, human oversight, accountability, informed consent, privacy, free speech, safety, and the protection of conscience rights and human dignity. Again, once we put information into, what happens to that information? How do we know that our privacy is protected, among other things? So participate in civic organizations and public discussions, surveys, and consultations on AI governance to help shape the laws and policies that come out around AI. Contribute your expertise. You all went to school or training and have a specific expertise. And so whether you're a physician, a teacher, a parent, engineer, lawyer, artist, business leader, or student, your experience can help shape how AI is responsibly used and developed. Create a culture in your own life that values human dignity. The ideas, content, conversations, and values we promote today will influence both the people who build AI and the data on which future AI systems learn. So, by writing articles that promote human dignity, by speaking on those issues, you're helping to create the wealth of data that's available for AI to use. Lastly, pray for wisdom. Pray for the scientists, physicians, policymakers, technology leaders, engineers, and all those who are developing AI, that they may use these powerful tools in service of truth, justice, and the dignity of every human person. So if we were to sum it up, every person has a role in ensuring that artificial intelligence remains a servant to humanity, never its master. So let's conclude this episode. As we discussed, artificial intelligence is not simply changing technology, it's actually reshaping our civilization. The future of AI will not ultimately be determined by engineers or algorithms, but by the moral vision and the values society chooses to prioritize. It will be determined by the values of the people who create, govern, use, and demand accountability from them. Ordinary people, like ourselves, can influence those values through our purchases, our votes, our conversations, our feedback, and our participation. And Pope Leo reminds us that technology must always remain a servant to humanity. As Catholics, our task is neither to fear AI nor to embrace it uncritically. Our task is to evaluate every innovation according to the one enduring standard, the protection of the inherent dignity of every human person. This leads us to the defining question of the AI age. Does this technology help us love and serve the human person, especially the person whom society is tempted to discard? If we fail to put the dignity of the human person at the center, Even our greatest technological achievements may undermine the very humanity they were meant to serve. But if instead we answer that question with the dignity of the human person at the center, AI can become a powerful instrument for healing, solidarity, and authentic human flourishing. And in the age of artificial intelligence, this is exactly what it means to build a culture of life. For my commentary on artificial intelligence, its impact on healthcare and humanity, and Pope Leo XIV's Encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity, here are 5 key takeaways. 1. AI is not just a technological revolution, it's a moral one. Artificial intelligence is transforming medicine, healthcare, education, and nearly every aspect of a society. The real question isn't whether AI is powerful, we know it is, but whether our moral formation is keeping pace with our technological capabilities. And I would argue that it is not. 2. Our understanding of the human person will shape the future of AI. Pope Leo XIV argues that before asking what AI can do, we must first ask what it means to be human. If we lose sight of the inherent dignity of every person, technology will increasingly be used to rank, optimize, commodify, and discard human life rather than to protect it. 3. AI must always serve humanity and never replace human moral judgment. AI can improve medicine by helping diagnose diseases, accelerating research and drug development, personalizing treatments, and streamlining administrative tasks to free up physicians to spend more time with their patients. But it can never replace the power of the human person, who has a conscience, prudence, compassion, and wisdom. Life and death decisions must always remain the responsibility of human beings. 4. AI presents serious bioethical risks for the most vulnerable people. From embryo grading and designer babies to quote-unquote quality of life medicine, algorithmic bias and discrimination against elderly, disabled, and preborn people, AI can reinforce a culture that measures people by productivity or predicted outcomes instead of recognizing their equal dignity. 5. Every one of us has a role in shaping AI. The future of AI will not ultimately be determined by engineers or algorithms. Through our values, votes, purchases, feedback, public engagement, and commitment to Christian personalism, ordinary people can help ensure that artificial intelligence remains a servant of humanity and contributes to a true culture of life. Because truth matters and human dignity isn't optional. This is Bioethics Babe. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Bioethics Babe podcast. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and your favorite podcast platform, and share with your friends and family. Also check out bioethicsbabe.com for the latest episodes and resources.